Guys, welcome to Crypto Insight. I've been a professional options trader for 20 years, and about a year ago, I switched my focus from equity options to crypto options. Why? Because of the huge volatility and opportunity in the space. Trading Bitcoin has allowed me to multiply my capital in a safe way. And in these videos, I will give you the benefit of my experience and insight into how I'm reading the crypto vol market and using options to either hedge or speculate on future expected moves in the crypto space. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video, and I hope you find this content useful. Thanks. Okay, so Bitcoin, this week, Bitcoin's just been locked in a range, right? So, you had that move up, that bounce post expiry, and then we've just been ranging in this channel, right? Lower end kind of 55-ish and upper end around 60,000, right? So really Bitcoin locked in a range, pretty boring, right? Realized vol coming down, 1 week realized obviously calming down, but implied vols in Bitcoin actually holding up relatively well. And I think that's got something to do with what's going on in the Ethereum market, which we'll talk about in a minute, right? But generally, seeing kind of Bitcoin volatility quite muted, but a little bit grinding up relative to what Realized is doing. Okay. Kind of today is the green, the orange is a week ago. You see what's going on there. So that some of that, the volatility in kind of June out to December is a fair amount higher. So despite Realized calming down, there's been a bit of a pop in implied volatility. And then skew hasn't really done much. Skew's kind of been quite muted. It's around 0 actually, right? So normally, whereas you used to get skew for the calls, Bitcoin skew has kind of normalized quite a lot and started to be quite symmetrical, right? So as much demand for puts as there is for calls, and historically you haven't seen that in Bitcoin, right? But it's basically because people are just less excited about the upside in Bitcoin, and I guess there's some demand for that protection coming through. Okay. Now Ethereum, on the other hand, continues to explode, right? So Ethereum, if we bring up the chart of that, just in the last week, we've had another 20% rally. Yeah. Just exploding, ridiculous numbers in the last sort of 2-3 weeks. We've seen something around 60-70%. So Realized has remained high. What's kind of driving it? I'd mentioned some of the drivers last week. But basically, so JP Morgan put out a piece. So they got a cross asset quant guy, strategist, who's put out a piece. He flagged quite a lot of positives around Ethereum and the outlook for Ethereum. He was talking about things like the European Investment Bank, EIB, used Ethereum blockchain to issue a 2-year zero coupon digital note last week. So that's an endorsement of Ethereum, of the Ethereum blockchain by a major official institution. Okay, pretty positive. Then you've got multiple ETFs that have been launched on Ethereum as well. So that's driving a lot of flow and a lot of volume. You've got structural decline in Ethereum supply from the protocol update that's coming this summer. So where they kind of burn a certain amount of Ethereum to kind of make it more in line with what's going on in Bitcoin in terms of the limited supply thing. There's obviously been a greater focus on ESG. And people are talking about the Ethereum blockchain being better for the environment and things like that, because rather than proof of work, it's proof of stake. So it's not as energy intensive. And then you've also got the sharp growth in NFTs, stable coins, and the whole DeFi ecosystem being dominated by Ethereum, basically, right? So a lot of positive factors that have kind of all culminated in this sort of what's been going on, and obviously the price momentum also draws people in, right? And so you've got a certain amount of adoption. If last year was all about Bitcoin adoption by institutions, then this year is all about Ethereum adoption, right? And you've had the futures get listed on the CME, and you've got a bunch of major banks who were and still are largely skeptical of the DeFi space and its challenge to the centralized controls. But they're increasingly getting involved. UBS, Goldman, Stanley's, Bank of New York, Mellon, right? They're all deepening their involvement in digital assets and exploring ways to offer their wealthy clients the way to invest in those assets, right? So more and more adoption and legitimizing the space and building traction and bringing flows to that market, basically, right? So that's kind of what's been driving the story and this sort of, crazy rise in prices. The kind of targets people are putting, are 10,000 on Ethereum, right, by the end of this year. I mean, the rate it's going, it could be there even sooner, yeah. But those don't seem that far-fetched now, given the rate of increase in this thing. I mean, I'm still favoring some sort of correction. I thought it was stretched last week, and we got a wobble. We got a wobble recently from 42 down to 36. 15% correction overnight, but it just recovers and bounces off that quickly. For me, that's not big enough. I'd probably like to see a correction back towards at least, 3,400 or beyond before thinking that's kind of a healthy correction and it can, rebuild off that, right? So for me, still feels very frothy. I'm long. I have been long. I've been overwriting calls against it in the short end of the curve, like May and June. Those calls have obviously, one of them's gone in the money. I'm short some 3,500s to May. I'm short some 5,000s to June. I'm doing nothing with those, right? Happy to be short those against my longs. They've kind of taken me out of my exposure. Happy to wait to see what happens with those. If we get a dip, if we get a correction back down, maybe I'll be able to cover those for not much. But I might just let them expire and kind of let myself get taken out of some of that exposure, basically, for now. So that's kind of how I'm playing it. In terms of the vol market, Ethereum vols obviously looking pretty different. Implieds have been moving up across, all tenors really, as the realized has stayed high and the market keeps exploding to the upside. So, all tenors, if I bring up the term structure where we are now, so that's the term structure there. You're looking at 100 in June. You're looking at 120 odd vol. In September, you're looking at 110. So, curves inverted, and it's all above 100 vol, basically, right? So about as high as this vol kind of gets in terms of the at the monies, right? But no real surprise. And in terms of, what's keeping that vol elevated as well, in part, it's kind of the activity and where the open interest is, right? So if we bring up kind of where open interest lies across all expirations in Ethereum, then you can see on this chart, you've got a staggering amount of open interest up at the 5,000 area, right? And if you dig deeper into that, a lot of that sits in the June expiry. So that June 5,000 area seems to be where the lion's share of the open interest is, and dealers are obviously short that, and the clients have been long that area. And that's kind of creating a bit of a vol squeeze as we rally so quickly, basically, right? So if we continue to rise towards 5,000, then that vol dynamic is probably going to remain. And Ethereum vols will probably remain quite elevated, right? Until whoever's bought that chunk of calls decides to do something with them. Yeah. But yeah, but all in all, still a pretty bullish outlook medium term for Ethereum, given the structure of the market and given where things are and how much institutional kind of coverage it's getting from the, people like JP Morgan cross asset strategy, right? So I think that's pretty good. I mean, Bitcoin might continue to kind of struggle and sort of trade sideways for a bit. I'm still looking for Bitcoin to go above 100,000 at some point this year. But in terms of, that's a doubling from here. Whereas God knows where Ethereum can go, right? Ethereum seems to be really supercharged and the high octane one. And so that potentially, could go quite a bit further. But don't be surprised if you see a correction in the short term. Generally, markets don't move in straight lines, even though, crypto is about as close as it gets to straight lines. But yeah, make sure if you've got some exposure to be careful you don't get too leveraged into it, that you get stopped out in these sharp, wild corrections back down. But for me, I quite like being short calls. maybe long a few puts, running some risk reversals around my exposure. And then so when those dips come, I'm in a position to monetize those and do something with them. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like this content, please subscribe to our channel, give the video a thumbs up, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. I'd also encourage you to sign up for a free trial to our live and interactive Macro Insight Zoom call. As part of our trading community, as well as the call, you'll also get access to our Telegram chat and our weekly market reports. To find out more, you can also connect with us on the socials. All the links are at our website, www.options-insight.com. Thanks.